I'm Naomi Ray, and this is How to Get Ahead in the Art World, a new mini-series from ArtNet News bringing you actionable career advice from insiders who have built lasting success in the industry. Today we're talking about the art of selling. Paintings, yes, but also yourself. My guest, Brooke Lampley, is one of the art world's most respected dealmakers. She rose to prominence in the auction world, climbing to senior leadership at Sotheby's, before making the leap to the gallery side as a senior director at Gagosian. Brooke's impressive network of collectors has grown from her ability to build genuine connections. In this conversation, we unpack what makes a sales pitch land, how to build good relationships with clients, and why your mindset may matter more than your address book. She also reflects on what 2 decades of pricing, negotiating, and closing deals have taught her about strategy, personality, and the role deep knowledge plays in earning confidence. Hi, Brooke. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thrilled to have you here to talk about all things selling. So I want to start somewhere interesting. Okay, so on the matter of expertise. Is a background in art history or expertise in art history or sort of a base level of knowledge in art an absolute necessity to succeed in the business of selling art?
I'm really glad you asked that because I get asked that a lot personally and in one-to-one conversations with people who are looking for career advice entering the field. And a lot of people ask more specifically about doing masters in arts administration degrees, because that's become a popular route, particularly to entering the auction houses, but also to other careers in the commercial art world. I don't believe that there's any academic training that is truly pre-professional for the commercial art world. I don't believe that there is any academic program that really accelerates your actual experience or career or makes you ready to jump several steps ahead. And it's very important to have those acculturating experiences at the start of your career, either learning how to navigate the organization that you're in, various administrative functions. It really goes back to art history. So I was anomalous and fortunate that I was pursuing an academic career and essentially bailed out.
You were on track to get a PhD in art history?
Yes, I was in a PhD program. I completed my master's requirements. I took a leave of absence and I never went back. That was because I was convinced from a young age that I wanted to be a curator. I ultimately found myself in an academic PhD program at a very young age, realized that I hadn't fully plotted the purpose, or maybe I didn't have enough career experience to know with total conviction that that was what I wanted to do. And I thought I should have more career experiences. But the bottom line is I use my knowledge of art history in my career every day. And I leverage that significantly. And in my 20 years working in an auction house, one of the greatest challenges that we face is the scope, diversity, and scale of our offerings. It's really hard to be prepared for everything that someone could ask you about. And my approach to dealing with that was to rely on my art historical chops. Someone asked me about something, even if I didn't know that particular artist, I could generally situate it in art history and make comparisons to artists who they were clearly influenced by and movements that they might have been looking at. And that's always been extremely useful to me, being confident and well-versed in art history broadly. So I would turn the question back on its head and say, I don't think that there's any training that gets you ahead in the art world. But I do think that there are a variety of disciplines and skill sets that could inform your career and make you a better salesperson.
Yes, exactly. So you have an expertise in art history, you're kind of starting there with that. So then what on the job kind of training, like what did you learn? Like what, not everybody with a background in art history is going to be somebody who's good at selling art. What was different for you?
The greatest practice of my work for many years, and one of the great joys of working in an auction house, in my view, is pricing. I spent so much time pricing art with our team, with other specialists, having this real intellectual debate around what values should be. For me, that was so exciting. And that's unique in the commercial art world. That was a unique practice and discipline that could really only be learned somewhere where you were accountable to sales, where you had to sell things. Because otherwise, you can assign values, but they're misinformed generally. They're informed by other values that aren't true to the market and the ebbs and flows of tastes and preferences and silly things like people like red more than they like green. Or generally, things get more expensive the bigger they get until they get too big. These are all shorthands that you learn when you're pricing that no one can really teach you, that come from experience. So I think pricing was one of the greatest educations of my life.
That's fascinating. Yes, I guess there are hard data points that you can look at, but all that stuff in between is something you've got to master. I want to talk about like personality types now. You have described yourself as type A and competitive. This was a couple of years ago. I don't know if you still define yourself that way, but these qualities have clearly contributed to your success. They are sharp-edged traits, not always ones that you might associate with the art of subtle persuasion or influencing people. So how has that kind of helped you or hindered you? And what do you think are the kind of skills or personality type that is best suited to succeeding in the industry?
I really believe that you need a diversity of salespeople to appeal to a diversity of clientele. So bottom line, I think that a lot of different personality types will succeed because they'll appeal to different collectors or buyers. I would still concede that we may have used the word type A at home this morning, but there are other attributes or other qualities that I would assign to that. And for me, it comes across, I think, also in my diligence, consistency, reliability, the way I show up for clients or the way that I try to earn trust and confidence is by being thorough, proactive, knowledgeable, precise. And those are qualities that the people who, are attracted to working with me, I think that really resonates with them. There was a client who was visiting me this morning. They said they would be there at 9 a.m. So I was there at 8:15. And when they were there at 9:50, I was delighted to see them as if it was 9 a.m. And when they followed up about being a little bit late, my response was, but of course, I'm here regardless. So while I am still those qualities that I described, perhaps it also manifests in a determination to be pleasant and present excellent client service.
I hear you. I'm by no means mocking type A. It's a personality trait that I relate to myself, and I think you can be very effective and also likable while enjoying that as a personality trait. But you said something interesting about different personality matches and matchups with clients. Can you untangle that a little bit? Is there a certain kind of client personality that you would know you're best suited to, or somebody who has a different approach or different kind of demeanor would be the one to kind of match up with this client or prospective client?
There are personality traits, but the even clearer way to express that, I think, is through demographics. I mean, people may shy away from that, but throughout my career, I have been a young woman, and I have not hidden or shied away from the fact that I am feminine, and I'm also American. I worked in a context when I first started the auction house. Many of the specialists were European, even the specialists based in the United States. So I really leaned into my female American brand. And I think I have a certain pedigreed background. There are some people who really like and gain confidence from the accolades of the institutions that I've attended and like my quite, I think, more direct, straightforward style. But I'm probably less insinuating. I'm less of a schmoozer. I'm not the world's best socializer. There's some pretty profound socializing that goes down in the art world. We're some of the greatest partiers. I am not the world's greatest partier, and that's not where I derive my client base from, typically. The clients who tend to gravitate towards me tend to be people who treat their art collecting kind of like their business. And they have a set window. They need things on time. They need things organized for them. And I can satisfy, I think, those needs.
You talked about pedigree, and it makes me think there's this kind of running joke in the art world. What is the best qualification to be a dealer? And, it's going to a fancy Swiss boarding school. But many people are successful in the industry who didn't. What advice would you have for someone who doesn't come from that kind of network? What kind of mindset or what talent could actually matter more than their address book?
So many of the people I know and work with and colleagues who I admire and respect don't have that background. I would say that passion is palpable and it's intoxicating and it's seductive, and the best sales are a seduction. What people want is your knowledge. And as much as we try to democratize the art world and encourage everyone to go to museums and galleries and auction houses, and these are all open to the public, it's still rarefied. It still feels inaccessible and remote to people. It's still something that a lot of people struggle to understand or don't feel intuitively comfortable with. People who can impart that comfort, people who can make you appreciate an artwork or experience it in a way that you never have before, that's an inspiring talent. People love to be around that. That has nothing to do with where you come from or what boarding school you went to. If you love art and you invest time really getting to know art, knowing artists, learning about art through either books or also with your own eyes, I really believe that comes across.
Now, I want to get a little bit more technical here and ask, so a big part of selling that people might not necessarily sort of think about in the first instance is actually securing something to sell in the first place. And you, in your career, have helped land some of the biggest consignments in recent memory, like the Maclot collection or Emily Fisher Landau estate. What is your strategy when you're trying to win a consignment?
Pursuing consignments is one of the great labors of love of my life. I loved trying to win collections. You have to prove that you're going to run the gauntlet for them. You have to show them that you're going to do the best job. That's the entire point. So whether that's through the passion that you demonstrate for the works, the appreciation and understanding that you represent for the collector or the family, the chemistry that you demonstrate with your team, that's really important. Showing that you're all aligned, you're all equally invested, you're all using the same playbook. All of these aspects are extremely important. But I mean, those are two great examples where I think we demonstrated an enormous passion for the project that we were presented with. And with that, we inspired the sellers and we established a synergy with them. What happens is that you create like a mutual belief. You have to convince them that your vision is the vision that they want to realize. And once you do that, then you're a team. Across the table, we become one team.
So put me in the room with a Brooke Lampley pitch. What is it like? Are you in a boardroom? Are you in a more intimate setting over coffee? Do you have an iPad, or is there a PowerPoint presentation involved? What does that look like?
Yeah, so very often we've been in boardrooms. We have internal boardrooms that we use, but also the collector or seller themselves might designate a space. That presentation can be as small as 5 people, or I've been in 30-person presentation rooms. That's a lot. I think for the Maclo collection, it was like 5 on either side. We try to be attentive to how many people we're presenting to and define ourselves in accordance, proportionally. Usually there is a television or a screen where you can do a PowerPoint illustration. The visuals are extremely important. Usually we are bringing illustrative examples of the comparables we've thought about in pricing the works. We're giving a contextual justification for our ambitions and expectations, where we think the price should start and where we think it will end. Because, of course, at auction, the estimate is just a strategy for what the ultimate sale price should be. And then also the illustration of the marketing campaign is extremely important and visually oriented. So usually there are many slides devoted to how the collection would be promoted and showcased. But there's an incredible array. You could have just as deep and significant a conversation one-on-one, and sometimes much more so than with 30 people. I've done all kinds. I look forward to having more of those more intimate, more direct conversations in the future, because I've seen so many of the strategies and I've had so much experience at the permutations. So I think I have really good advice to give at this point in my career.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that there might be some sellers who actually, they don't want you to have a home court advantage. They might be bringing you into a different environment, where it's a bit more challenging. But that advice, can you give me, like, if you had sort of a couple minutes and I had to, for whatever reason, go in and fill space in a room, was going to be speaking, what are some tips?
I think it's very hard for anyone in any situation to achieve all of their goals. And I think people could do a better job of defining their priorities and what their ultimate goals are. Because very often in these situations, as a seller, as a vendor, we're catering to all of the vanity impulses. The person wants to achieve the highest price. They want the biggest bang promotion. And it's actually, you want a legacy, you want the honor, or do you want discretion? Sometimes these impulses can really be at odds with each other. And I think that people aren't clear enough on whether the price or the glory sometimes is what they're after. And, I could take a scalpel to that. Like, I could be quite precise about my recommendations based on what the actual goal is.
You transitioned from the auction house world to gallery world. How does the pitch and how does the pressure kind of change in those two environments?
Well, it's related to what I was saying before. Without criticizing, at an auction house, we're giving you an estimate at which we are confident we can sell the work tomorrow. That is no longer my job. Now I can take something and try to sell it for the best price that I can possibly sell it for over a set or flexible time frame. And that's very much how I contextualize it or discuss it with my clients is, you have options. I may not sell this tomorrow at this price. I may not even sell it in the next 3 months at this price. But I am in a position to try and to position the work very differently and to be more strategic about who and how I present it, who I present it to and how I present it. And that's a very different job. I was excited to go somewhere where I could take the time and also have the resources to think more creatively about how I position my consignments. Now, having said that, auction is a remarkable engine for sales. And there are some prices that I really think can only be achieved with that competitive friction, but they are fundamentally very different models. At auction, people are encouraged and validated by someone competing against them. At a gallery, you have to have the confidence, the desire, and the expedience to buy something before anybody else does. Otherwise, you won't get it. So while many people, of course, buy at galleries and auction houses, I do find that there are people who are attracted to one model over the other. And it's clear why, because they appeal to very different behavioral instincts and mechanisms.
So you have the luxury of time in many ways, but when it comes to closing, without the urgency of the auction room, how do you inject that urgency into closing a deal?
At the auction house, yes, you always have the lever of the auction that ultimately closes the sale for you. It's convenient. It's more personal when you're selling privately or at the gallery. Often there's an urgency because there's an intense demand for certain artists. That's also a propulsion. But if it's not that situation, if it's a secondary work, then it's much more about the client's individual time frame. And that can be an advantage because people almost forget that people have personal lives. But there are so many times at auction where we have 3 or 4 people interested in something the day before, and 2 of them just don't show up the night of. And it's such perplexing information to relay or to restate, but life just gets in the way. Someone's flight gets delayed, or something happens in their family. And ultimately, the auction isn't the universally most important thing going on in every single person's life. So in those cases, selling on a personalized timeline can be much more convenient and hospitable. I just think of it myself. It's amazing to me. I worked at auction houses for 20 years. I've spent 20 years coaching people on setting the lowest estimate they can tolerate to galvanize the greatest audience, to drive competition, which ultimately drives the highest final price. But when I go to sell something myself, I cannot follow my own instructions. I tried to sell a handbag on eBay. I constantly set the price at the price that I had bought it for. No one was going to bid on it at that price. I try to buy furniture occasionally in auctions. I hate the process. I hate waiting to the last minute to see someone drive a million bids against me in the last minute. It causes so much anxiety. I so much prefer knowing that the price is X and I could buy it or not and have it tomorrow, and I can decide for the next 24 hours or the next 48 hours. And if I take too much time, it might no longer be available to me. But I'm fascinated by how much more appealing I find that experience. So I can only imagine for people bidding at very high levels, the levels that I sell art, that it's a version of the same. That sometimes it's exciting, occasionally, and fun, but it's also just really nerve-wracking and it's annoying when you've prepared yourself to bid a certain amount and it goes way beyond what you've prepared yourself for, or even just a little bit beyond. Those are really difficult situations when someone has set a limit of 25 and it goes to 26.5. And they're struggling with what to do with that. So I think retail is still the dominant customer experience.
Talked about the 2 different arenas for selling. The other thing that's kind of changing is the buyer base. We've got a whole new generation of people coming into the market that not everybody knows how to kind of work with them. You've got crypto investors, you've got millennials, you have Gen Z collectors from Asia. How do these kind of new generations of buyers differ than the approach that you would take with someone like Ken Griffin?
I think there are a multitude of audiences for art, and there are going to be new and changing audiences all the time. Clearly, we're in a more digital era, and the art world is trying to evolve and adjust to that uncomfortably at times, but we're trying. I think people need information faster. They need a lot more context and edification at their fingertips, something that I'm used to that I think a lot of the people I work with aren't necessarily used to yet, is that the art world and price comparables are much more transparent than they ever used to be. So people expect a lot more information to come with their offerings than they ever did before, because the attitude is, well, I could just go do that, but why should I have to go do that? Why don't you just provide it to me? So I don't think, 20 years ago that an offering came with a page of comparables and a list of all the other works from the series that have sold or which are in public or private collections. That information is pretty customary now. There are a lot of advisors and intermediaries. There's a lot of people acquiring or commissioning additional expertise. And those people also lean back on the industry to provide a lot of that information to them. So we've had to professionalize, I think, a lot more and create a lot more data around what we're selling than was ever before. Also, I think visual simulation or simulacra, like install shots, I think that will continue. I think there's a lot more of a thought about coordinating design and integrating art and design. And so there's a lot more proactive thinking about the situation that art will be placed into in homes. And, I find that I'm doing a lot more renderings for people as they're considering works. That wasn't the commonplace. People used to buy things and have no consideration for where they were putting them very often. And, very often weren't putting them anywhere. So I think there are a lot more services that we are expected to provide to a newer audience of buyers. But, I think that's natural. I think that's going to be an evolution of the business and something that becomes customary until the next frontier.
So we've talked a lot about selling art, but obviously a dimension of this and of success in any arena is selling yourself. Now, you moved from a prestigious academic background to top-tier auction houses, Christie's and Sotheby's, and now to a top-tier gallery. So what advice do you have to share about kind of personal branding and being your own advocate?
It's a great question. It's something that I struggled with because truly in my heart, I'd like the world to be a meritocracy, and I'd like to just put my head down and do my work and be recognized for it. I loved school for that reason, because it was more oriented that way and much less political or socially motivated. The work world isn't, and it requires a lot of different thinking and self-advocacy. I still lean on the work hard, treat people well. You never know where someone's going to pop up again in your life. The world operates on a referral and recommendation system. It means everything for people to say nice things about you. So I really try hard in all of my interactions in the course of any day to be nice to everybody. Someone out there hates me, I'm sure, but I hope that reflects. And that's been a constant of my career. Yes, I think it's important to advocate, but I would be careful in the word advocate. I might choose the word instigate or innovate. I used to tell people working in an auction house that once I was a specialist in the department, there was really no pressure or need from the organization for my job to evolve. Whereas a lot of present day companies are really invested in like career mapping and evolution. When I started in the industry, we weren't that progressive yet, if we are now. And you could be a specialist forever. You could be a specialist with different titles based on your seniority and tenure, but you could essentially have the same job forever. So if you didn't want to have the same job forever, you needed to come up with your own ideas and suggest ways that your job could change and evolve. So if I did anything for myself, what I did was suggest opportunities that I'd be excited about, or say that I'm game to do the next thing, or I was available to try new things or take on new challenges. I was definitely that person, made myself available and curious to what could be next. Because if I didn't, nobody was going to do that for me. Nobody was worried about whether my career was evolving and changing. There was no internal need for that. But I think that there are sometimes people mistake advocacy and just advocate for themselves without knowing what they're advocating for. Like, you definitely need to connect that back to your experience, your contribution, how you think your contribution could grow, how you could deliver more for the company. Like any relationship, it needs to be a two-way street. So people who lose sight of that really irritate managers and do themselves a disservice when they're just asking for things that they think they deserve or are entitled to, when what the organization wants to hear is, how can you help us do better?
It's kind of another version of securing consigners in a way. Like, it's securing that belief in you from the structure and forcing it to kind of change in response to that.
Well, not to be banal, but I would go back to working hard. I'm a hard worker. I worked hard for the places I worked for. I work hard for my clients. And if there are ways that they then see fit or opportunities that flow to me because of that, or that I'm recognized for, I appreciate that and I'm excited about it. But a lot of the opportunities flowed from being the person who showed up, the person who was willing to be there early or stay late and didn't complain about it. And the less you complain about it, the more often you're going to be asked to do it. And that might be a great opportunity for you. So in my heyday as a very exalted chairman of global fine art at Sotheby's, I was very often the last person there waiting for a client who was coming at 10 o'clock on a Sunday. That's not glamorous, but it was worth it to me. And that's how I demonstrated the significance of the relationship to them and how committed I was. And that's also a demonstration to my colleagues, to people who work for me, that I'll go the extra mile. And so, I think it's about its values.
I think we'll leave it there with working hard and knowing your value and knowing what other people value. So thank you so much, Brooke, for joining me and sharing with us your tips on selling. It's a rare opportunity to kind of get a glimpse into your talents, so I'm grateful.
Thank you so much. For me, it's a great opportunity to talk to a lot of people at once, because I do get approached by a lot of people who want advice about progressing in this industry. I don't think there are a lot of clear roadmaps. I'm not sure anyone's written that book yet about how to be the best art salesperson, but I'm happy to help.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to catch the next episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're enjoying the series and want more on the business side of art, subscribe to Art Market Minute. How to Get Ahead in the Art World is produced by Sonia Manalili in partnership with Art Market Mentors.